Welcome to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus, because it became very blurry over the centuries. In the time of Constantine, the corrupt Jewish the Christian leaders became Jews. They became Jewish Christians, what you call Judeo-Christians, because the Roman soldiers were converting to Christianity. But you can't be a Christian and a soldier and go and kill other children of God. You can't do that. For the first few hundred years, they were all pacifists. So under Constantine, eventually the church leaders caved in, so Roman soldiers could go to war and kill and murder other children of God, of the loving Creator. And so they were Jewish Christians then. So they turned Christians back to worshipping the two-headed God of the Jews. Yahweh, of course, there are two Yahwehs in the Old Testament. One is a violent, murdering war god that the Egyptians called Sekhmet, and the Greeks Ares, and the Romans Mars. And the Jews called their war god Yahweh. Okay, same God. Brutal, murdering, genocidal, thieving, lying killer. Jesus said, "You are children of your father Satan. He was a murderer and a liar from the start, and you do the lusts and desires of him." He was telling them, you're worshipping two gods. Stop doing that. Then there's the God of love. The Romans had Pax, the Greeks had Irene, the Egyptians had Shu. Different temple, different name, different life force. A God of white light and truth and love, and a dark, evil, satanic war god. All war gods are satanic. The Jews were cunning and deceptive and deceiving. They came up with the idea that if they called their God of love, which is the opposing God of the evil, satanic God, war god, the opposite God, if they called the opposite God by the same name as their war god, then they could have this schizophrenic God, kill and murder and steal, and God loves them when they do that, because God is also love. No, sorry, that's a lie. The Jewish religion is dualistic, and it has been probably the longest running lie in human history that I know of. It's clearly two gods. The same as all the other cultures, there's no difference. They had their war god, they had their God of love. Jesus tries to bring them out into the singularity of love only. So he opens up into the clear light mind experience, is what the Buddhists call it. Buddha taught it and Jesus taught it. Clean the inside of your mind out of all the evil in it. Don't worship a war god. Don't hurt anyone. And then you'll have this clear light mind experience which has no evil in it. And your mind will be completely undisturbed and at peace and at rest in love for everyone. Perfect equanimity. Jesus said, if you clean your mind out, your whole body will be filled with light, because your mind or eye will be single. You'll see everything through love. If you're duality, the Jews had a war god and a god of peace, right? That's two different gods stuck on one body called Yahweh. The only monotheistic thing about Yahweh is it had one body, but two heads sticking out of it. And Jesus said, if you're worshipping a divided thing like that, you're in darkness, and he's correct. So I'm a Christian pacifist, born into the Jewish Christian Catholic Church, left when I was 16, and I followed, I learned Buddha's teachings because he was a pacifist, and the Catholics weren't teaching that we have to be pacifists and that sort of thing. They were lying about Jesus, that the God of the Jews is the same God of Jesus. Well, that's a lie. So I knew that by the time I was 16 or 17. And the book of Revelation, they were leaving it there. Instead, I said, rip that out. That's slander. So I left, and I just was only interested in people who taught about love and non-violence, and any spiritual teacher who taught that, or whether it was whatever culture taught that, or native religion. I was interested in those things. I had a real joy of studying spiritual things in my late teens and early 20s. But I always stayed with Jesus as my birth spiritual teacher to guide me out of this dangerous world of death and suffering, and to the loving world, another dimension, and we leave in our spiritual body. Jesus said, Buddha said your consciousness leaves and your body stays here of flesh. Jesus said your body of flesh dies, feed it to the vultures, you're leaving in your spiritual body. They're different words, different terminologies, but they both knew the same thing. And another part of you is going to leave when your body of flesh dies. And they both said it has to be clean and pure. I like the way Jesus says, like spiritual body, and your spirit. It's just a nice human way to think about it, so you can get a handle on it. So your spiritual body is inside your physical body of flesh. Think of water being in a vase. Water takes the shape of the vase perfectly because it's liquid. But water is not the clay. Clay is a different substance. It's solid, dirt, the earth, the body, this physical body of dirt. Water is spirit. Spirit evaporates when the vase is smashed. So the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged is my contribution to try to remove the slander spoken about Jesus by a lot of the Jewish Christian churches in the world. And it is slander and lies, and they're just teaching the Jewish religion, and Jesus is just a sacrificial lamb, whereas his teachings and his words transform your mind so that you can leave after death and go to the heavenly spiritual world of love. But you've got to become love and non-violence now. It's all about his words, not about his being a sacrificial lamb. So Jesus taught we can all experience an inner spiritual awakening if we search for it. He called this the treasure hidden in the field of earth or flesh. This is our eternal spiritual identity, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving Creator. Our bodies of flesh are only temporary and empowered by earthly things, and all flesh dies. Only our spiritual body and soul mind of love lives on to come into the presence of our loving Creator to reap as we have sown. His teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence can help awaken us all into a new spiritual life here on earth, leading us to the heavenly spiritual world of love after death. Jesus taught we all have two different bodies with us in one, and he said that the spiritual body, being eternal, is the most important to be healthy and well in spirit. He provides us with the spiritual instructions to follow and become at one with to be awakened and transformed into spiritual children of light of our loving spiritual Creator in heaven. So my gospel translation, because I'm just a Christian, I've never been poisoned by the Jewish religion, never been poisoned by the book of Revelations, never been poisoned by the stinking war god of the Jews. It's just a war god, satanic war god. Jesus even said so. That has never interested me in any way whatsoever. And it's never impaired my vision of Jesus, his love and non-violence. Therefore, as he said to Philip, if you see me, you see God, love and non-violence. So I was stunned when I investigated this in recent years, just how many of these churches, these Jewish Christian churches, are just synagogues, and Jesus is an addition. But they've got him there, and they've got charities, so they've got some of the loving Creator of heaven there, and then they've got he's coming back on the clouds, and he's going to throw people into hell, and I think, oh my goodness. No wonder, the churches are empty and you're driving them away. You're teaching them about the Jewish God, Yahweh, the murdering satanic war god, and you're saying Jesus is the son of the satanic murdering genocidal war god. Don't say that. That's a lie. That's filthy slander. So my advice to all Christians is to cut the Bible in two, get rid of the Jewish religion. You don't need it. You're a Christian. That's a Jewian book. We're Christians. Rip out the book of Revelation and burn it, incinerate it. That is pure satanic slander written by an apocalyptic Jew to assassinate the identity of Jesus and the loving Creator. And if you're a Christian, you'll understand what I'm saying. If you're a Jewish Christian, you'll think, oh, that's blasphemy. That's not. If you understand Jesus, you'll understand what I've said is correct. Rip out the book of Revelation. It's filthy, stinking slander. And we're not Jews. They've got two gods, we've got one. But that God's only love. As Jesus said, a love is like the sun that rises on the good and the evil, like the rain that falls on the just and the unjust. Lest your love is as perfect as this love, you will not enter heaven. It's in his words. Look at his words, please. Jesus, the Passover, Matthew 26, 17, 25. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples asked Jesus, where will you go? Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover? He said, go into the city, and a man carrying a jar will meet you, and follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the householder, the teacher asked, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room, furnished and ready to prepare for us. And they went and found it just as Jesus told them, and prepared the Passover. When evening came, he sat at table with the 12 disciples. Jesus said, truly I say to you, one of you who is eating with me will betray me. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of who he was speaking about. And one after another they asked if they were the one, saying, is it I, teacher? Jesus said, it is the one who is dipping bread into the dish with me. One of his disciples, whom Jesus loved, was lying close to the breast of Jesus. So Simon Peter beckoned to him and said, tell us who it is of whom he speaks. So being close to Jesus, he asked him, teacher, who is it? Jesus answered, It is he to whom I shall give this morsel after I have dipped it. So he dipped the morsel and gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. Judas asked, "Is it I, teacher?" Jesus replied, "You have said so." Yes, it's you. You do it. Then you go and do it. Then after eating the morsel, Jesus said to him, "What you are going to do quickly." Now no one at the table knew why he said this to him. Some thought that because Judas had the money box, Jesus was telling him to buy more for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. So immediately after receiving the morsel, he went out, and it was night. So Jesus almost selects Judas to do it, and he knows what Judas is going to do and tells him, "Go on, I know what you're going to do. Quick, go and do it." So Jesus really sets this up himself, and Jesus is important so that he can fulfill his destiny to divide his two bodies apart by being murdered. His body of flesh dies and goes back to the earth, and he appears with the disciples only in his spiritual body, which is perfect, the heavenly body, just briefly before he went to the other dimension, the heavenly dimension. So he had to get someone to kill his body, and the Jews were happy to do that. Author. Some believe Jesus actually wanted one of the disciples to lead the chief priest to him later that night when they were alone and vulnerable, so he could be arrested without causing trouble for the crowds who followed him, and then be charged and crucified and rise in his spiritual body from his dead body of flesh to fulfill his spiritual teachings he was giving the disciples about us all having two bodies in one. You can imagine them all sitting there, So his statement, would have been more like this, possibly. One of you at this table will have to betray me. Then they naturally would have said, "I'm not doing it, teacher. Is it me? Do you want me to do it? I don't want to do that." And maybe one of you is going to have to. "Well, I don't want to do it." Is it me? Do you want me to do it? "I don't want to do that." You could imagine them saying that. And maybe Judas was not a betrayer at all, but in fact the only disciple willing to do as Jesus asked, which is why Jesus handed him the morsel of bread he dipped. Only someone who had a deep belief and trust in Jesus could voluntarily perform such an act as this at his teacher's request. Or, of course, maybe Judas was just a bad egg and was the worst follower of Jesus. But the way it's written, it's very much like Jesus knows, look, they've been trying to kill me. They're going to kill me soon. They killed John the Baptist. They're nearly killing me. They've nearly stoned him to death a few times. He's just managed to get out of it. They're going to kill him eventually because he's contradicting the two-headed God of the Jews, Yahweh. He's talking about this one loving creator. It's a different God. And it's blasphemy, of course, so they kill you for that. So he's speaking a bit more openly, calling them worshippers of Satan, satanic war god. I mean, he's really asking for trouble to get stoned to death, because he's opening up more about the truth that they're worshipping a dualistic God. So I could imagine him just doing that. Look, one of you tonight's going to have to betray me. You're going to have to go and get the chief priests and bring them here because, the crowds are asleep and, we're up here on the olive garden here or going up to the olive garden later. Bring them up there. Someone's going to have to do it. One of you is going to have to do it. Well, you can imagine no one would want to do it. And then, which one of us is going to do it? Look, I'll select the person who's going to do it for me. And he gives it to Judas. Judas, I know you'll do it for me. Which throws another whole light on Judas, but we haven't got a lot of information about Judas other than he apparently hung himself. He apparently was paid money to do it. He apparently, for some reason, wanted to betray Jesus, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, if he's handling the money bag and they're travelling around everything and apparently he's dipping into it, apparently these are sort of slanderous things said about Judas, then why would he give that up? Why would he give up that sort of golden sort of job of handling the money if that's what he's all about? It doesn't make sense to me. And this has been overwritten to cast Judas as an evil person. But I think Jesus wanted one of them to do it for him that night. And he said, one of you is going to have to do this for me tonight. And I just think they were going, oh, it's not me. You don't want me to do it, do you? I don't want to do that. I don't want to turn you in. I don't want to bring them to You know. But look, it's only my opinion. I can read it there that I wouldn't be surprised if that's what really happened. And Judas may have been a fairly special disciple, in fact. You know. But however, we haven't got enough evidence, so I can't claim anything more than it's just the way it's written. He dips the bread to select someone. I'll choose the one who has to do it for me. Oh, not me. It's not me, is it? It's not me. I don't want to do it. It's not me. You don't want me to do it, do you? Look, I'll choose the one who's going to do it. See, one of you will have to betray me. Oh, I'll do it for you, says Peter. You know, no one said that. So he said, I'll have to choose one of you. So he chose Judas. I think we don't know as much about Judas as we would, you know, we should know. I think there's things that are lost in time. But Jesus knew what he was going to do anyway. Absolutely. Which throws another light on it. Why would Judas go to do what he has to do, to go and get the Pharisees or whatever, and the scribes, and meet them up on the hill? I mean, Judas knew where they were going, up to the garden or whatever, and where they go. And so, you know, bring them up there. We'll go up there. We'll meet you up there, sort of thing. Bring them there. Why would Judas, if he was sort of secretly trying to get Jesus killed, and if Jesus says to him openly, you know, go quickly, I know what you're going to do. I mean, you know, would Judas have gone sort of, okay, yeah, I'm going to go and get him to kill you now. I'm going to get him to arrest you. I mean, if Jesus was secretly plotting and Jesus openly sort of says, go on, go, I know what you're going to do, hurry up, go and do it. It's likely that Jesus would have sort of, oh no, I'm not doing anything. No, I'm not doing anything, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. You know, if he was a sort of a lying, deceptive person, then that would be a sort of a different thing. But as I say, I don't have enough evidence on that. No one really does. But it just seems a bit odd, that's all, that he chose Judas. He'll dip the bread in and he gives it to Judas. It's just like, one of you is going to have to betray me. Oh, none of us, is it me? You don't want me to do it? I'll choose the one. It's a very interesting point, but we may have, you know, Judas may be maligned, you know. He may be the only one willing to do it. Matthew 26:30, the Last Supper. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, take this and eat, for this represents my body of flesh, which I will give up for you. Do this in memory of me. Then he took the cup, and giving thanks said, drink of it, all of you, for this is the cup of my blood, which is poured out for many, to reveal the new spiritual identity. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Author: Jesus taught we all have two different bodies with us right now. The temporary body of flesh is just food for the vultures when it dies, and it has no life anymore, as Jesus said himself. It is our spiritual body and soul, mind of love that leaves our dead body of flesh, and we are taken to be near our loving spiritual Creator who created them for us to have in the heavenly spiritual world, if we are prepared, if we're filled with love and non-violence, because you can't get into heaven otherwise. This is the main core teachings of Jesus and Buddha. Become a loving, non-violent child on earth, and you'll go to a much better world afterwards, when your body of flesh dies. It's dualistic. If you've got to hold on to your mortal mind, you know, make sure it doesn't do bad things. Live out of a spiritual mind. The new covenant, as it is called, is in fact our new spiritual body and character that lives on as a spiritual child of a loving Creator in heaven. That's the meaning of the word covenant. Jesus had to let his body of flesh be killed to release his fully awoken spiritual body, and then appear to the disciples briefly in it, so they finally understood the main message of his teachings. That's what the death on the cross was all about. I'll let them kill one of my bodies, then I will appear to you in my other body, which is perfect and beautiful, like an angel's body, and doesn't have wounds in it or anything like that. That was to cover up what really happened. And you have one of these bodies in you as well. It's the treasure hidden inside you, heaven's within you. This is the spiritual body you need to bring alive to go to the next higher world of heaven. That's what he was teaching. And he went there in his spiritual body, which was filled with the loving spiritual life force from the loving spiritual creator of the loving spiritual universe and loving spiritual world, where we can all go to, and you'll never suffer again, never be hurt again, never die again, because that all only happens in the material world of biological bodies of flesh and blood and stuff like this, brains. You have a different body, Jesus is saying. Your mind is a spiritual mind of love. It's different. I don't have any revelations about it, but I believe what he's saying. And I can only imagine how massively beautiful it must be. To never be hurt again. It's harmless. Heaven's harmless. The spiritual universe is harmless. The life force that's behind all that universe and world, the living spiritual life force, the creator, the loving creator, is harmless and loving, and can only create harmless and loving things, harmless and loving creatures, harmless and loving children. That's why we have to become children of the loving spiritual creator, not Yahweh, because there are two Yahwehs and you're going to get trapped. It's a dualistic religion. It's a dangerous religion. There is a good Yahweh, but there are two Yahwehs. With Jesus, there's only one loving spiritual creator and no one else. It's only love. She is only love, or he is only love. So it's a really, really important point. And the other thing about this, the covenant, the new covenant, the word covenant in the Greek interlinears, it really means disposition, your new disposition. So he's spilling his blood to reveal a new disposition. And the word disposition is, what's your disposition like? Oh, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm generous, I'm forgiving, I have perfect equanimity. You're a spiritual child. That's your disposition. He's going to leave and reveal to them his pure spiritual body by itself. That's the new identity. He's already got it though. He's got it within him already. His spiritual body is alive, and with him his spiritual mind, you might say, has come fully alive, and that's in some sort of form or other, like liquid water. And he can appear to them then only in his spiritual body, in his new disposition or his new covenant, the new character, the new identity. He's already got it, but it will be fully only spiritual, because he said God is spirit, and we must come to God in spirit and in truth. That's your true identity. You must come to heaven in your spiritual body. Are you ready to leave your body of flesh? Are you ready? How do I get ready, you say? Follow Jesus' words. Love, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, equanimity, generosity. Reach out and help those who have fallen down. Hurt no one. And your spiritual body will leave and be in heaven. That's your new disposition. That's the new covenant. He's talking about your new body. You've got a new body that's fully, only spiritual, and you'll never suffer again in heaven. No one will hurt you, nothing can happen. There are no wars or anything like that. They can't come in, all those children, because they're false identities. They've created these satanic shadow things all over there, darkness and filth and stink. So they have to be washed clean or cleansed in the river, the flowing river called ripping the fluid. I call it the river, flowing river of reaping what you sow. The millstone drags them down. The millstone of the sins they committed, they can't cross the river. They get dragged down. And it's that river that provides them with the experiences of all the suffering they cause to others. It's just a way of talking about it. But they're cleansed by undergoing the suffering that they actually caused to others, which they think they got away with back on earth, but they didn't. The spiritual life force knows everything we do. So if you've hurt a child, they know that you hurt that child and how that child was hurt. And that spiritual life force can just give that experience back to you. Because you've got to remember, you're talking about a spiritual creator here. Jesus said, disciples fall away. You will all fall away from me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after my spiritual body is raised from my dead body of flesh, I will go before you into Galilee to meet you there. Peter said, Though all may fall away from you, I will never fall away, Master. I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. Jesus said to him, Truly, I say to you, this very night before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Indeed, Satan has asked for you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I prayed for you, that your faith should not fail. And when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. But Peter adamantly replied, Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. The others all agreed. But once the flesh is threatened, suddenly you become mortal again instead of spiritual. They forget they got a spiritual body. We all do. It's something we have to overcome to be a true Christian, a pacifist Christian. You've got to get over that. All bodies die, but our spirit lives on. And that's the one we must keep clean and healthy and well. Keep your spirit strong. Hold on to that. That'll get you through everything, including death. But if it's not alive and well, it's going to be a bit difficult. If it's covered in murder and sin, like the warmongers, you're going to be in big, big trouble. After your body of flesh dies, that's going to be nothing compared to what you go through after you die if you've been one of these belonging to these satanic armies that are murdering each other. Author, the spiritual commitment is based on understanding we have another spiritual body with our body of flesh that does not die. If we doubt that, or are not yet spiritually awakened enough to have full belief in this truth, we will be reluctant to let go of our earthly life, whether threatened by other children with death or threatened by illness with death. Our spirit is not the flesh. Jesus waits to be arrested, Matthew 26:36-46. Jesus and his disciples went to the Mount of Olives to a garden called Gethsemane. He said to his disciples, Rest here while I pray. And he took Peter, James and John with him, saying to them, My spirit is very sorrowful. Remain here and wait with me. He then went on a little further and spoke with our loving spiritual Creator, saying, If you want to save me from going through this, do so. However, I realize this is the real purpose of everything you have shown me, and I will do it. And after saying this, he came back to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to them, Why do you sleep? Rise up for now, the hour has come, and pray that you may not fall into the way of temptation. Jesus arrested, Matthew 26:47-56. While Jesus was speaking, a band of soldiers with swords and clubs and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, led by Judas, approached them, for Judas knew where he would be found. Then Jesus stepped forward and said, Whom do you seek? They answered, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus said, I am he. They stumbled backwards in surprise after hearing him say this so openly. Again he asked them, Whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus answered, I told you that I am he. So, if you only seek me, then let these others go. Then one of his followers drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. But Jesus said, No more of this. Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Pacifist Christians, don't pick up the gun and join armies. And he touched the ear of the slave and healed him. Jesus then said to those who came to arrest him, Why have you come out with swords and clubs as if to arrest a robber? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, you did not seize me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness. And all the disciples were frightened and fled from Jesus. And the band of soldiers and officers seized Jesus and bound him. Peter's denial, Matthew 26:69-75. Simon Peter followed Jesus with another disciple, and as he entered the courtyard of the high priest, the maid who kept the door said to Peter, Are you not also one of this man's disciples? Peter said, I'm not. And he went out to the porch, where another maid saw him and said to the bystanders, This man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again he denied it, saying, I do not know the man. Then a little while later another bystander said to him, Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean. But he began to swear by an oath that he did not know Jesus. And then the cock crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had predicted. Before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times. And he broke down and wept bitterly. He was human. He wasn't fully spiritual yet, Jesus interrogated. Matthew 26:57-68. Those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where he and the scribes had gathered to question Jesus. Now the chief priests and the whole council questioned Jesus about his teachings and his disciples. Jesus answered, I have always spoken openly to the world and have taught in synagogues and in the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing secretly. Why do you ask me these things? Ask those who have heard me, for they know what I have spoken. One of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, Is that how you answer the high priest? Jesus said, If I have spoken wrongly, tell me what it is. Tell me what it was I said. But if I have spoken correctly, why do you strike me? And the chief priests and the whole council tried to find witnesses to testify he had spoken blasphemy. And some bore false witness against him, but their testimony did not agree. And the high priest then stood up and said to Jesus, Have you no answer to these accusations and testimonies against you? But Jesus remained silent. Then the high priest said to him, Tell us, are you the anointed one of our God? Jesus said, If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I ask you, you will not answer. But as you say, I am. And the high priest tore his garments and said, We need no more witnesses, for he has uttered blasphemy himself. You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment? They all answered, He deserves death. Then they spat on his face and put a cover over his head and struck him, saying mockingly, Prophesy to us, anointed one who just struck you. So we'll leave it there. So he's definitely orchestrated his death to be at the Passover. He wanted one of the disciples to, go and do the bit with it. You've got to go and get him and bring him. We'll meet you up away from the crowds at night so no one gets hurt. There's no big violence. But even then, one of the disciples drew a sword and cut the ear off. And what did Jesus do? He healed the ear of the enemy. He's a pacifist Christian. He who lives by the gun will perish by the gun. It's just as simple as that. Your spiritual life anyway. But so he orchestrates his own arrest, really. He certainly orchestrates the timing. He knows they're going to kill him before too long. He's speaking much more openly about their two-headed God Yahweh. You have heard it said in the past, love your neighbour, hate your enemy. He's referring to the two-headed Yahweh God. But he has to do it sort of cryptically. I say to you, love your enemy. Bless those who curse you. You have to understand the times. If he'd have said it openly, the Jewish religion, you're worshipping two different gods, not one. They would have stoned him to death. And then he said, you're worshipping a satanic god. Well, definitely stone him to death. We'll all stone him to death now. And so he knew that it wouldn't be long before they would stone him to death, because he was speaking more openly, blaspheming, and their law was then they could stone him to death. And they were trying to trap him all the time. So when you look at Jesus' words, you have to understand he had to use clever ways to prolong his life long enough to give us all the beautiful parables and instructions that we have two bodies, and keep your spiritual body alive with the loving life force from heaven, and keep your life only at single with love, and be a non-violent, loving Christian, follower of him to heaven. He had to get all that message out and forgive. How many times? Always forgive. Be compassionate. Condemn not, you'll not be condemned. Forgive and you'll be forgiven. Judge not, you'll not be judged. He had to give us the instruction booklet. And he'd given us enough instructions. That's a beautiful thing. There are enough instructions there for me to become spiritually awakened like him and Buddha. There's enough. But you've got to get rid of the Jewish poisonous stuff and the overlays and the lies in there. And Matthew's Gospels has definitely been manipulated and perverted in parts. And you've got to correct the Greek interlinears. So you've got to clean it out of the rubbish and the false things, which is what I've done to the best of my ability. Because I've always known him as love and non-violence, so that's my guidance. That's how I'm guided to do this. He's love and non-violence. What's this saying here? Well, that doesn't sound like him. Well, what's wrong with this? And then you go into the Greek interlinear, and then you go, oh, I see. They've chosen that word instead of that word. Oh, they're inflecting that he's going to crush them when he falls on them, instead of winnow them of their sins when he alights upon them. That's the classic cornerstone one that I came across. As soon as I saw that, I thought, wow, Jewish Christians really want this war god Yahweh to hang around. Jesus says, get rid of it, kill it. That's Satan. But it's in the churches. It's in all Jewish Christian churches. Satan's up there in the Bible. It's the Old Testament war god Yahweh one. That is, when I say Satan, Every single war god is a satanic war god. Putin's a little satanic war god, right? Adolf Hitler was a satanic war god. Sekhmet, Ares, Mars, the Roman war god, the Jewish war god Yahweh One, war god. They're all the same. Brutal, murdering killers, thieves and liars, as Jesus said. And they were worshipping that war god. He said that. You're children of that war god. Now, you have to understand it's time to move on. Christian churches have to get rid of the Old Testament, put it up on the shelf. Don't refer to it. We say the other Yahweh has nothing to do with Jesus. That's a false Yahweh. However they want to put it, the Christian churches have to do this. They must. They've got to clean this up. The character of Jesus, to assassinate the loving Creator, to turn you back into being a Jew instead of a Christian. So it's really important. However, in today's world, not many children are interested in Jesus, understandably, because of the way he's presented in the old-fashioned way of the Jewish war god Yahweh, and loves you, but also throws you into hell or incinerates you if you do something wrong. That's I don't understand the loving life force, the Creator. I don't understand. I think of her, I use she, as an extraordinarily beautiful spiritual being and a creative life force who has consciousness. Soul mind of love. So I can express her love in a certain way, and you have a different soul mind, and everyone has a different soul mind. And it's a bit like the water in the vase analogy again. All the vases may look different, but the water inside is just the same water. It's just water. So the spiritual love in you and me and everyone on earth, we could all express that love today if you woke up to your spiritual body and your spiritual soul mind of love in your own way. And you can express it in a unique way. And that's the beauty of love. This loving spiritual Creator can sort of create an infinite number of variations on the theme of love, an infinite number of creatures. As Jesus said, they're eternal. But they're only empowered by one thing, the loving spiritual life force of the heavenly spiritual loving Creator. We're talking about another dimension, so my eyeballs of flesh can't see it. I've never heard voices or seen angels or anything like that. But through seeing Jesus' words and just understanding them clearly, and I've been so blessed ever since a little child, I've always seen him as love and non-violence. It wasn't until I studied this problem that I saw where all the problems came from. The Jewish religion is the big problem to start with. Get rid of it. Rip out the book of Revelation. That's been written by an apocalyptic Jew who hates Jesus and hates the loving Creator of Jesus. That writer wants you to go back and worship the murdering, thieving war god of the Jews. Whoever put that in there, that was there to destroy the Christian religion. And if you don't understand that, then you don't know Jesus, and you don't know the God of Jesus. And I tell you that because He's only love and non-violence. So it can't be him coming back on the clouds or the God or the source of life that he was at one with. It's that simple. Just because you've been brainwashed to believe it, but it makes no sense, but you still believe it. It's not logical, but you still believe it. It's not intelligent, but you still believe it because it's been there so long and everyone tells you it is. Use your common sense. Use your own logic. Blind faith is dangerous. You must have intelligent faith. The book of Revelation doesn't match Jesus at all. It matches the satanic war god of the Jews and the followers of the satanic war god. So I think my job is just to point this out. because no one's talking about it. It's like, blimey. Is there an elephant in the room? Does anyone see it? No elephant in the room here. No. What's this big thing here? Coming on the clouds, wars, that's Jesus, is it? Oh yes, that's right, yes, that's not an elephant, that's Jesus. He's suddenly changed or something. He's now Yahweh, the war God one. It's a Jewish thing. So get the Jewish religion out of the Christian religion, please. Put it up on the shelf with the other religions, because there is a loving Yahweh there and a violent war God there. Two gods. Once you understand the Jewish religion is dualistic, then you realize Jesus is monotheistic, only love. Then that's the monotheistic religion. Love and non-violence. Heaven's a place of love. Then it's easy. Then you look at his words and get a book like mine or something that removes a lot of the other lies and stuff, and you'll see how it flows to how you wake up to become love now in this dangerous world, but you leave and go to a better world where no one will hurt you ever again. And no violent children can come there. The warmongers can't come in and all that sort of stuff. They have to be cleansed. That's hell. Anyway, we'll move on to the next part of this Matthew chapter. Love your way to heaven or hate your way to hell. The choice is yours. Choose the first one, please. And bring love from heaven to earth.